Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in for this evening's session. It will take about an hour, and we're going to try to keep a fairly tight ship. Conscious that there's some sailing to watch later on tonight in about an hour and a half time, hopefully, given that if the wind gods play nicely today. This is the first session for the 2024 Coach Development webinar series. We ran a similar kind of program last year, really with the intention of providing just some extra learning and opportunity for some sort of networking as well for accredited coaches within the network across clubs and class associations. There's 5 sessions in this year's series. Basically, last Tuesday, pretty much of each month between now till November. And it's a joint sort of initiative between Performance Pathways team, who I'll introduce over to in a second, and the Grow team, which I'm part of as National Participation Manager. So without much ado, I shall pass over to Ash Brunning to kick us off and facilitate tonight's session.
Thank you, Ian. And thanks everyone for coming along. I'll just put the PowerPoint up on the screen and we can get started. So same thing, Ian, I can see you. Can you tell me if the PowerPoint has entered presentation mode for me? Thank you. Very good. All right, everyone. Again, thanks for coming. I thought I'd just do a quick introduction. So Ian spoke to you a little bit around those dates, and you can see that on the first slide there of the PowerPoint, and then the titles of each one of the coach development facilitations and webinars. So I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Ash Brunning. I'm the National Pathway Technical Manager for Australian Sailing, and a big interest in coach development in my role, but also just in life. And so the others who are going to be helping out on this particular set of webinar series include Amelia Catt. So Amelia is our Tasmanian Pathway Coordinator. She's also the Futures Coach in the 470 class. Brady Lowe, so he's the South Australian Pathways Coordinator. He's also the Futures Coach in the 470, the FX and the 49er in part roles. Mitch Kennedy is the Queensland lead for performance. Tom Squires is the foiling coach from New South Wales. Ian Leeson, who's already introduced himself, so the National Participation Manager. And this whole process is very much his baby. He's put it together. He's put a big effort into getting all these people involved. And so great to have his involvement. And then, of course, Leslie Vasala, who's supporting some of the administration. And I believe Sue, if I'm right, Ian, will be supporting after this one.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, Sue's actually over in Paris or flying out tonight to watch some sport.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty good excuse, I'd say. I'll kick into the first slide and we'll get started. So just essentially, we'll try and keep it tight. An hour is probably pretty ambitious, but I've also mentioned hit record. We've already done that, which is good. Just when you're in these kind of things like the webinar, or this kind of facilitated approach, be respectful of others. Understand that there's going to be really varied levels of experience present, and we can learn something from everyone. We can learn something from one another. And I think if we start with that in mind, we're going to have a much better time. We're going to learn more. Please click and stay on mute, but keep your videos on so we can see faces. And then if I instruct to come off, or if we want to have a chat about some things, I'll get you guys to come off and talk, particularly if you're leading one of your groups. Type any questions as we go, particularly around any of the content that gets delivered through it, and we'll either try and answer it in real time or take it offline. So Ian or Leslie can inform me about that when they see it. And I think above all, just really encouraging everyone to really try and contribute. Really important to get everyone to kind of put in their 2 cents and to understand more around what we're all trying to do in terms of our coaching. Cool. So to start off, just the first 2 or 3 minutes, can I get you guys to type into the chat box? And it's just a bit of an understanding piece for us, but it's also just a bit of an introduction in general. What motivated you to start coaching, and what do you coach now? So if you could all just pop open the chat box and start typing away into that. I can't see anything again, but hopefully everyone will get into that, and I'll just watch my clock for the next 2 minutes.
Can everyone see the chat box okay? Like everyone can access it? Can I get Michael or Dan Blight? Oh yeah, beautiful. Okay, as I've seen that I can see Michael and Dan Blight. That was all I was going to ask you, if you can access it. All good. Opti, F11, 420s, Derek Giles, sharing my love of the sport and helping people to progress to love sailing.
Nice.
Laser. Awesome. It's anonymous, but a really good one there. My old coach inspired me, and I like to pass on my knowledge to others. I'm currently coaching Optis. Enjoy the sport. Would like to help others participate safely. Elliot Sevens, great. So a couple of keel boats. Optis. Another keel boats, which is great to see that people are doing some keelboat coaching across the clubs and in the country. Laser, desire to develop sailors around at my club.
Yeah, guys, I can't get mine. I can't seem to be able to type into mine. Gone into the chat.
Oh, okay. You can speak it out if you want, Michael.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, no, I'm across the board and pretty much everything. But yeah, mainly just really focusing on cats and jumping in on the foiling side of things now. That's what I'm really pushing for.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Hopefully you're going to attend the last one, at least of this series as well, with Tom Squires talking about some fundamentals to coaching foils.
Yeah, cool. All right.
It's Greg Kemp here. Just I'm having same problem with telling me I'm not online, even though I am.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
just many years of sailing multiple classes, and a certain coach by the name of Brady Lowe encouraged me to come on board with sailing at RQ and coaching there, and I've been doing that now for 6 years, and coaching everything from Ilka 4s, 6s, 29ers, Optis, you name it, getting involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great to see, because a few people have brought that up in the chat as well, around being inspired by previous coaches or people already coaching. So, which I think to me, it really highlights the importance of the roles that coaches do in that inspiring people.
Absolutely. We're almost near 3 minutes, so I might move into the next little section, Ian, but great to get everyone to type in and have a think about what motivated them and why they coach now, and even better to hear that others have inspired them along the way. So just to kick off and to have a little bit of a think about context, I wanted to share with you guys something that comes from the piece of work that we've done in the Performance Pathways, which is around our coach individual development plans. So the definition that we use for art of coaching when we're discussing how a coach is kind of tracking against that, and kind of what they're focusing on, is that they're able to design purposeful training sessions, ask skillful questions, and work across the coaching style continuum to execute timely and effective interventions. We'll get into some of the terminology here based on the context, preferred learning styles, and the long-term development needs of an athlete. Speak of the devil, that's Brady Lowe's, the back of Brady Lowe's head right there, Greg. But we'll move into the next slide. For me, one of the people who I've read a bit and I've heard speak about this is Brene Brown. And so Brene, not only an author, but also a podcaster and a speaker. Coaching is an art. It's far easier said than done. It takes courage to question rather than to offer up advice, provide an answer, or unleash a solution. And in this, you're probably starting to notice some trends. truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weaknesses. So being able to interact and work with people. In the photo there is Ben Walkermeyer, our current ILCA 6 radial coach, with Casey on the first time she'd, Casey Aminio, first time she'd won a medal. So here's the test, Dan, if our breakout rooms are going to work. So the intention of this work together is to do a little bit of a breakout room where you're going to get into some groups of around 4. The idea is to have a discussion around what the key differences are in your minds between coaching and instructing. So you've heard a couple of quotes and you've kind of seen a little bit there in terms of some of the definition. You guys have all worked across probably both spaces. Some of you have done a fair bit in both, looking around the room. So consider the question together, and then what we'll do is we'll get a couple of groups to come back and play back their findings to the wider group. So we'll probably pick on 3 groups, get them to kind of nominate one person to speak, and then they'll come back and talk around what they think are the key differences between coaching and instructing. So Ian, if you want to move into breakout rooms, and just make sure in the chat box that question is written in there so no one forgets the question. And the only other thing I'd say is too, you've got 10 minutes, so make sure that when you're introducing yourselves, you do it in a concise manner, because by doing that, you'll be able to discuss the question a little bit more. From our group, I nominate Stefan, so he can kick us off, and then maybe Ian, if you'd like to pick 2 other groups, just at random if you'd like. But Stefan, would you like to kick off on what you spoke about or what we spoke about in our group?
I'm not sure if I can repeat it, but so for us, the key differences between coaching and instructing is the style of delivery. So instructing is typically sharing knowledge in a very short period of time. So the coaching style is more trying to draw out knowledge. So you're trying to help someone learn and understand for themselves. I think one thing we mentioned as well, Chelsea said, is that often, the person delivering this could be the same person as well. It's, some days you're an instructor, some days you're a coach, and it really depends on, the group you have or the individuals you're working with. So, for us, a lot of us, we're instructors and then coaches as well.
Anything else, Stefan? Or?
I'm trying to remember what I said.
I can play back one more for you. So I think you spoke about coaching being on the focus on people and having the time to understand who they were, and so who you were working with, and then also that Chelsea spoke about the different types of developmental coaching. So there's consulting and there's mentoring and there's training and there's therapy. And so some other bits and pieces came up around the different roles that a coach would wear, or role hats that a coach would wear versus an instructor. But I think that'll cover it from our group, Ian. So I might thank you, Stefan. I might ask Ian to pick 2 more groups.
Yep. Okay. No problem. I'm randomly going to call out a room number, so hopefully someone knows what room they were in, because I haven't got a list of who was in what room. Room 7. Does anyone know that they were in room 7?
Pick names at random, Ian. Just get super random.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, go good. Let's go. Julian Taylor.
Nice. Julian.
Whatever room you were in. And you're now the spokesperson for that room as well, to share what we've discussed. Or you can nominate someone else from your room.
No, that's all good. I got it. They nominated me anyway. Yeah, no, we kind of, it's a very similar story in our room. We basically talked about kind of there was like a clear change from being an instructor and being a coach. And it felt like in our group, being an instructor was you're clearly presenting and delivering a syllabus and set targets like a jive, attack. This is how you capsize. versus when you're a coach, you're trying to achieve your athlete or your students' goals. And we found that in coaching, like obviously it can be Olympic coaching, it could be, skiffs, and those goals are often events, but they can also be a certain skill set. So in coaching, we found that it could be, if you're sailing a 16-foot skiff, it could be landing an awesome drive in 30 knots. And that's not really something that's instructed. Like instructing is, okay, let's teach them how to drive, but let's not teach them how to drive a 16-foot skiff, right? Like it's a completely different level. That's what we thought.
Nice, Julian. And really nice at the beginning too, around the instructor operating to a syllabus, quite systemized, and then the coaching tending to be a little bit longer term, and then getting more into the wider variety of the skill, and to be able to reach an unconscious level in that skill potentially down the line. As you say, being able to drive in 30 knots in a skiff, for anyone who's sailed a skiff, which is not me because I'm a humble laser sailor like Julian, it is pretty hard from what I've seen from the outside. So I imagine there's quite a bit that goes into that. Anything else? Should we move to the next one?
Yeah, last one, just to feedback to the room. Again, completely at random. Camille, if you'd like to speak up for what you, sort of a summary of what was discussed in your room.
Hello.
I think I think I ended up drawing the short straw, didn't I? Yeah, so in our room, we just talked about the fact that we talked about the fact that coaching is individual. It's one-on-one, whereas instructing is to a group, and the fact that it depends on one of the things we talked about is the time scale. If you're not going to see these people again for 6 months, then what you might have thought of a coaching session, it's going to become an instruction session because you don't have that follow-up. So you don't really have the opportunity to do, as much traditional coaching within that. And the big thing we said was, coaching, just talking about the fact that in coaching, you often go backwards, or you might have to go back to something, to a core skill, whereas in instruction, you're always trying to move forward. In coaching, sometimes you have to go back to something you just because that individual, that crew needs to go back to that.
Fantastic. And like going back to that, is that typically to maybe unwind something that they've learned, or it might even be addressing something that's missing in their development along the way? Is that?
Yeah, it's often having to unlearn something, isn't it? You're not quite sure what it is, and then you go, oh, hang on, I can see it. Yep. And then having to unlearn something, saying, I don't know where you picked this up from, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the consistency around the time scale as well, like one tends to be a little bit shorter, a little bit more directive, and the other one tends to be more of an exploration. And I think that was spoken to pretty well. So thank you, Derek. Was there anything else? Was there any other notes from that group that you'd want to share?
No, that was the main things. I think Stefan covered the other ones.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna move into the next slide, but you'll all be happy to see. It's very much a couple of different definitions that you've all pretty much spoken to. So I'll keep it pretty simple, but instructing in general, and very much just a couple of definitions, more of a one-sided directive and instructional conversation led by a matter expert. It's typically done based on a curriculum or knowing, or when learners know little to nothing around the skill or knowledge they're trying to acquire, and often related to the need to learn in a shorter time. So I'm hearing lots of consistency in terms of what the groups have come up with, which is fantastic. Coaching tends to be more two-way, ongoing, and a non-directive approach, where the coach is more of a guide, with a focus on enabling the sailor, in our particular case, to being coached to take more responsibility for their own learning, decisions, and actions. I wanted to share with you guys a model. I've actually shared it once before in one of these coach development seminars or webinars, but essentially it's the competence model. So there's 4 stages to the competence model: unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. Now, it's going to be a bit confusing to sound like that, but I can make it a little bit more simple. So I don't know what I'm doing and I can't do it. I know what I need to do, but I can't do it easily. Conscious competence is I know what I need to do and I can do it, but I need to think about it. And unconscious competence is I can do it without thinking. And typically when we're thinking around the development of skills, knowledge, and other bits and pieces, instructing tends to be in that first area where people know little to nothing around this particular skill or what they're trying to do. And there tends to be a bit more of a directive approach to kind of help them through to see some specifics. The join between coaching and instructing tends to happen around that conscious incompetence or awareness stage, where the application of questions starts to come in a little bit more. And I think really good coaches might even be asking questions around things like unconscious incompetence, even there, to try and understand a little bit more, though you'll see a predominant directive approach. So just sharing that model just as a little bit of a framing piece, and you can see where instructing and coaching kind of intersect.
Ash, just quickly, just in our room, just if you skip back to that model a minute.
Yeah, go back one. Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that we did talk about in our breakout room was just around, like, it is a continuum, and there's definitely, like, there's areas of time where instructors might be using some coaching techniques, and there's some times when coaching, you're using some instructional techniques depending on what the skill is you're trying to build in the sailor. So it was just sort of an interesting to highlight that kind of crossover point.
Yeah, fantastic, and very much the next stage in the content that will come out in a second starts to highlight that actually that you wear a couple of different role hats, and sometimes you do need to be directive or intervene, and other times you would need to apply more questioning to help people. And it depends, and so much of it is that context matters. So I'll move into that next slide now. So the specific definitions that I wanted to talk around, and it's kind of speaking to your point, Ian, is around questioning versus intervention. Intervention tends to be the directive kind of side of things, but we'll start with questioning. So questioning invites the sailor or the athlete to explore and articulate their thoughts, feelings, and ideas more extensively. They prompt more than binary responses, so more than a yes or a no, and they're aimed at enabling self-reflection and actioning from that person. Intervention typically occurs as a coaching method to be used between or within sessions. So it's a little bit more immediate. It's a little bit more in real time. And it is used to directly outline, so it's a directive form, the steps taken to correct, enhance, or develop the decisions an athlete, or that's my terminology, but a sailor, an athlete, someone learning has made. And so there's actually times, Ian, as you say, where you do need to wear the instructor hat, because that typically tends to be where you're starting to do a little bit more intervention. And at other times, you might be spending more time in the questioning to help people explore what they know and then be able to action it. So just moving into our next breakout group. So Ian, hopefully it will all work again. If we end up in different groups, that's cool. But the question that we're going to be asking here, and as Ian said, if maybe one of you can take a photo with your phone, just so you got the question, discuss examples of when to apply questioning in your coaching versus when to intervene directly. And so just have a chat as a group, come up with a couple of examples about, when you might use questioning a little bit more, and when you might actually be a little bit more directive or intervene.
Let's start off with, just because I know him, the group that Brady Lowe was in. Brady, do you want to nominate someone from your group? You're the first name I saw on the list as well.
Yeah, Salty can do it. He gave a good summary.
Silence.
Dan Bly. We're calling Dan Bly.
Oh, hello, everyone. I hope that's better.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. So we thought, being directive, like being questioning, and is great, and it develops a deeper learning. But sometimes when the speed of development is required, potentially outweighs the benefits of that self-learning. Is certainly one time when being directive would be your go-to. So you may start with some questioning and see, I guess, the rate of gaining of understanding from the athlete. And if that potentially wasn't working, it might be necessary to go to a more directive approach. Certainly at a time to pass a blockage in the learning pipeline or the timeline of development, it might be necessary to be directive in a way such that you say, look, we've had a look at how we can try out and achieve this skill, technique, whatever. How about we come back to it, but let's just do it this way for now, and we'll come back to it once we've tried this way. And if that's not working, then we'll see how we go. And I suppose it's a bit of a to facilitate that unlocking of the next skill down the pipeline, it might be really necessary to sort of say, yeah, let's just do it this way for now, and we'll come back and look at it at some time in the future.
Fantastic, Dan. So I heard a couple of key kind of trends there. So time matters, it sounds like.
Yes.
Context matters there too. So
Yes.
it matters on what are we trying to achieve potentially in terms of, we're trying to do this quickly, but also, what's the complexity of the skill?
Yeah,
if we've got a blockage along the way.
Yeah. And what's the consequence of not gaining that sort of self-learning benefit? Is it something that's going to, self-learning, like, the benefits of questioning around something like strategy versus the benefits of questioning around like a closed skill where it might be, like a boat, like rigging or like tuning or something like that.
Yep.
Well, maybe that's not a closed skill, but like say boat handling or something like that, which is very much a case of, what is the benefit of the questioning self-learning that's going to go on versus the time factor of that, them doing it that way.
Yeah, great summary. And the variability and the complexity of the skill or what you're trying to learn is a determining factor there, because one might be more simple and then you can actually spend less time doing it. The other one, you'll actually have to think about to become unconsciously competent to be able to do it in the future. And sometimes, and particularly in sailing, I've often reflected with some of the athletes over time or other coaches, you actually don't ever reach a point of unconscious competence in high variable decision making, because there's always another thing.
Right. So something like a muscle memory skill that's going to happen might be achievable at unconscious competence, but like I don't think that's ever going to be achievable, say in tactics coming into a top mark or something like that.
Yeah, win strategy, anything that can be so high variable that you actually really need to think about and deconstruct and understand so well. And so that's a really good summary. And thank you, Dan, for your time, and thanks for your group's input. We'll seek out another, and we've probably got time for another 2 more groups.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to choose randomly off the list. Chelsea Hull.
Oh, thanks, Ian.
That's okay, Chelsea. Nothing like dobbing you in. You can dob someone else in from your group if you want.
Well, I'll have a go, and Stefan can jump in if he has other input.
Awesome.
We talked about the questioning to understand what the sailors' gaps might be in their development. And then in the when to intervene directly, it could be it's already been covered, but it's based on context, time pressures. It could be for safety, like there's lightning. We've got to get the sailors off the water. But we talked about intervening for poor behaviour and explaining to them later on why it's not acceptable. Yeah.
Good summary, Chelsea. Anything else, Stefan or Chelsea, that you picked up through that conversation in the group?
Charles covered it pretty well. It was very much, the context is what's important. So if there's time, typically it's intervention. So, as Charles mentioned, it could be time as in we need to get people off the water, or time as in right now is the time to intervene because it's a behavioral issue. Whereas questioning could be more for discovery or self self-learning.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ian, one more?
Yeah, last one.
See if you can
Hayley.
pick a group, random group.
Yeah. I just because I can see the name here. Let's go with Hayley, your group, or you from your group.
Thanks, Ian.
That's okay.
We had a group of just two of us, so Jonathan can jump in if I miss anything. We spoke, about similar points. We also mentioned questioning to gather an understanding of the level that the sailors are at. It also can then help inform when and what to intervene with throughout the session. And then, we spoke typically intervening a little bit more around technique development and perhaps agreeing on, or I guess using the questioning to come to an agreement on what that technique, the desired outcome might be. So just kind of flipping modes depending on what the group's working on or the individual. Jonathan, did I miss anything?
I think that more or less covers it. I think Hayley gave some good examples of that, the timeliness of intervening, and the opportunity arises, and you really want to get the information into the situation straight away. Whereas asking a question, particularly if she's talking about cats going past at speed, there's not much you can do. Can't have a conversation. So I think that mode, shifting gears and changing modes, I think is really the key thing.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Hayley. Hayley, I'm just thinking you probably had a couple of interesting campaign plan reviews recently, knowing what you do for your work. What are some of the questions you might have asked your athletes in some of those campaign plan meetings? Just give an example or two.
When we're reviewing, do you mean in that context?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, you've had a couple of athletes come back from injury recently. That would have been pretty tough.
Yeah, I guess just really getting their understanding on, like, getting them to reflect quite openly without influencing, I guess. So hearing it a little bit more, where opening the questioning up is good. I just sort of ask them, what really basic questions. What did you learn? What worked well? Was there anything you learned about yourself? Like some self-awareness questions. So something you learn about the venue or the environment or your competitors. Really open questions that I don't know the answers to. It's the key thing. And then I guess scaling it in and out, short term, long term. What does that mean for tomorrow? What does that mean for next year? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice. That's a really awesome summary, and I'm glad I asked the question. And I was like, can you give an example of when you've had to intervene a little bit more recently as well?
Yeah, I think well, I work with athletes between sort of 18 and I don't know. I think the oldest at the moment is about 23, but they often come to us with interesting ideas on what they want, interesting plans, and what they want to do, but they're also seeking guidance as well. So the intervening part around, I guess in this context, talking about campaign planning, probably sits a little bit more with the coaches, and I like offering a little bit of, well, actually, this doesn't really align with what you're trying to do. And so then we get a bit more operational, I suppose, is part of that intervening. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic example. And that might be guiding them to the right events for their development, right? It could be making sure that they're taking the right steps because they only know what they know. So there might be some intervention at times in that sense. Thanks, Hales. Yeah, really appreciate dropped you in it a little bit there, but you definitely carried it. So thank you. I saw Greg put his hand up before. Greg, did you want to just add in something, and then we might end up closing it out shortly, I think.
Yeah, sure. We've talked a lot about technique and style and sailing and activities, but the one thing I find sometimes we have to lean in is on the mental side. particularly when you've got an athlete or a sailor that has had some bad results. You definitely have to get in there and intervene and stop the death spiral of self-doubt sometimes, and try and get them to refocus on what's important rather than what's happened in the past. As a coach, that intervention, I think, is a really, really important part at times. Other parts of the intervention also can be on group dynamics within a squad, that you need to try and get the squad refocused on what they're all there for rather than what the individuals are there for at times. So that was just my bit there, to get away from the sort of techniques and skills and get
no, fantastic. And the mental side, when you're speaking to that, Greg, as well, sometimes the intervention is to actually help them reset so they can get back to explore, so they can get back to understand what they're there to try and do.
Yeah, no, I can give you an example of a young athlete or a young sailor I was working with a couple of years ago at a nationals. They had great results day 1 and 2, really bad results day 3, where they looked as if they were going to not finish top 5, and had to get them to refocus and sort of put the uncontrollables behind them again and work on only what they could control.
Nice, bring them back to process. Now, that's a fantastic example. And as you say, it's not all skills and it's not all knowledge. Sometimes it's being able to reset mentally, and the coach wears many caps. And so I really appreciate those examples.
I use the example of Anne-Marie Rindham's reset after the last race in the last Olympics, where she had to reset going into the gold medal race.
Yep, she certainly did. Thanks, Greg. We appreciate that and appreciate the insight. Dan, I saw you had your hand up, and then maybe we'll go on to the next slide and close it out.
Yeah, it's actually just a question around what Hayley was discussing, and when we choose to question or when we choose to be directive, I think sometimes deferring that questioning, after, like, maybe not directly after a poor session at a debrief, maybe the brief for the next day's session might be a better time to let them have some questioning, or be a bit more questioning. Or do you find sometimes that you give them the questions maybe overnight and then they come back and that you can shape it a bit better that way?
Hales, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the individual. So if you know the people you're working with and their learning styles and their ways of operating, I guess that's kind of our job, is how do we get the best out of the people we're working with? And we can't put a cookie cutter. So the questioning even can just go into getting to know the people you're with. So just, kind of beginning phases might just be learning as much as you can about them, and getting them to learn, have that self-awareness about themselves as well.
Cool.
Full range. I think I've had like some athletes like to just deal with it before they leave the boat park on a bad day, and others don't want to do it till the morning. So yeah, I guess it's just
horses
learning that.
Yeah, horses for courses, exactly. Ian, I saw you got your hand up. You're probably telling me I need to close out.
No, it was just a very quick one just to add into, I think, what Hayley said there. So in our group, we talk very much around, often it is dependent on the individual in the way that certain individuals will prefer or want more directive approach. Others will want more of an open questioning approach. And I think, to me, that just sort of highlights the importance of a coach's role in getting to know the sailors that they're working with. So sort of seeking to understand what they want from what they're doing, sort of thing. So yeah, it was just sort of adding into that piece.
And in knowing them, then you can apply the learning style that they need, right? And then
correct.
You can apply the way that they actually want to receive information. They could be visual, they could be all about the discussion. So I agree, and I think that's a great pickup. Trucks, probably time for one more, and then I'll move into the next slide. Trucks, you there?
You're on mute, mate.
Got me. On Dan and Hayley's one, sometimes the coaches can be pretty consistent with beginning sessions with, especially when you see someone day to day. One of my first things I say is, what did you wish you'd said in the debrief yesterday? And something I'd often say in the debrief would be, if we were to go out and repeat that session right now, what knowledge would you bring into that session? And it just creates reflection. And if that's consistent out of you, they come in pretty well prepared. So you actually get some really good content if you make it a habit. of asking those questions. But the one thing I wanted to say on intervention, because I use it as a very powerful tool, it doesn't always have to be negative. In fact, it's usually I'm driving in hard to mark exactly the point in time of what I wanted, not what I didn't want to see. And I think that's very easy to overlook, the power of actually what's going right. And so I'm often zooming in, because as we get more into the unconscious competence, they start to not even know that they're doing something really important correctly. And you've actually got to sometimes run in and mark it and go, that has just bought you an opportunity. That has just bought you a boat length. That has just, and that's intervention too, but it's actually quite powerful in reinforcing what you want.
Thanks, Trax. And a definite, I guess, insight that's relative to when you're speaking to these individual athletes or people that you work with, Trax, that they're always looking for a little extra each time, and they're hungry for it, and they kind of want that knowledge. And sometimes they want to be told it quickly. And so everyone's a little bit different as to what they need. I think, I can't remember if I saw one more hand there, but what I might do is, just to close out, just given we've actually had a really good discussion there at the back end around this, but I wanted to just have a quick little summary around what does good look like in terms of the art of coaching. So in that picture there, Lily from WA, Brooke from New South Wales, and Sarah Winther, who's one of our future Zilka 6 coaches from New Zealand. And Sarah is actually one of the people who I would say is a great questioner and is very good at deciding when to intervene, particularly given that part of her background is sports psychology. But a coach that's practicing well in art of coaching is a coach that has a clear purpose and a plan. We've heard many times tonight that they understand that context matters. They know their sailor or their athlete, and they know the learning styles. And so if you're in a group setting, it might be then approximating the majority of the group and what they need. You try and meet the needs of the many, not the few, because we don't all have individual or small groups of athletes. Enabling others, so others typically tends to be the sailors in our case, to take ownership of their learning and their decisions and their actions. It's knowing when to listen versus when to speak. It's knowing when to question versus when to intervene, which we've just covered off. It's being clear on the long-term development needs of that sailor, and that it's not going to always happen in a day. Sometimes it's going to take time, and we have to be cool with that. And then the final one, which I often think about, is the ability to respectfully challenge or at times protect sailors and athletes. So being able to hold people accountable is another really significant part of the art of coaching. Being able to have those, possibly people call them difficult or challenging conversations, to help people be better, to help them do a better job of what they're trying to do. And often you'll find that they're thankful for that. I just wanted to close out, and I wanted to tell a really short story, and then I'll get you guys to quickly type into the chat boxes again. But I was in South Australia once, and I was actually with Brady Lowe, and I was hanging out in a coach boat, and we met a young kid who was sailing a 4.7 there. His name's Grady Sayers. He's sailing a 470 at the moment. We were in Goa, which is like, Brady, you'll probably have to chime in here, but I think it's like the end of a river. Is it the end of the River Murray? I don't know. Coming out. Brades, can you chime in here?
It's the Murray River.
Murray River, I've nailed it. Yeah, I get around to have a look at things a bit. I don't always know where I'm on the water. But it's brown. It's pretty hard to read the wind on the water. He was winning the race in the 4.7 there, and there was a good little fleet, maybe 15 boats or so. And coming up the last beat, rather than covering the boats that were behind him, he kind of just kept sailing his race. And the boat that was in second and then the boat that was in third split from him off the bottom gate. So they went to the other side. They got a little bit of a shift in their favour, and they managed to beat him across the line. And this kid, I think he was maybe 14 or 15 at the time, Braids, so he was pretty young. But I remember going up to him, and he was pretty circumspect. So, most people would be a bit pissed off, but he was actually in pretty good shape. Like he didn't look grumpy, and he didn't look happy, but he didn't look grumpy. And I actually asked him, Trucks, to your previous question, like, good race, Grady. What would you have done differently next time? And rather than telling me I would have just covered them up the course and I would have, beaten them, which would have been a fair answer, he actually said, I guess it matters what the next time looks like. And essentially what he was saying to me, a 14-year-old kid, was context matters. What I do and the decisions that I make is going to be based off what I see. And that's the beauty of our sport in sailing, that it's about reading all of this information around us to make the best decisions. And so as a coach, hearing that from a young guy like Grady was fantastic. And so thinking about how we can kind of get those approaches through questioning and then being interventionist in a timely manner is a big part of the art of coaching. So understanding when to do what and why. So just to close out, if you guys want to just quickly type into the chat box, why do you still coach now? So what's keeping you in it? And I'd like to thank you all and say thanks for joining us. And then see you at the next round, which is going to be led by Amelia on small group dynamics. So if you guys just want to type that in now, and then you can head on your way. And thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. So why do you still coach now? The question.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Liam.
Yeah, and as Ash said, the next one's on the 27th of August with Amelia, same time.
Working with inspiring individuals. Yep. Thanks, Alistair. Still coach to see the positive outcomes of sailors. Thanks, Greg. Achieved through their efforts and commitment. Sorry, I didn't see the back end of that. My 12-year-old. Yeah, I enjoy seeing people and crews improve. Absolutely. There's an intrinsic benefit that comes from that. Great to see people progress and improve and help others. Fantastic. In service of others. William Potter, I've been in a group with Will today a couple of times, just starting out, so not sick of it yet. I hope you won't become sick of it, Will. You've got some good curiosity about you. Great to see, get people to progress. Progression and shared love of the sport, absolutely. Being a small part of that, yeah, absolutely, Dan. Being part of someone's journey, inspiring the kids, being there to support them. Great points. Thank you, Lulu. Anyone else? Stefan, thanks for joining me in the groups tonight, Stefan. Enjoy seeing others, the journey of others, inspiring them along the way. Absolutely. Helping sailors develop and grow. Keeping young people sailing. Absolutely, we need that, especially us in high performance. We need young people coming through that really love the sport and want to make something of it, especially with their succession and growth. Yeah. Keep the development, hopefully to provide coaching support for the future generations. No worries, Will. Matty J, sharing the passion and positive benefits of sport, sailing competition for young people and for the love of competition. I know that's definitely a proud and focus area for you, Matt, and you've done a great job over in WA, driving that over the years. I'm just starting on my journey as a dinghy instructor. I love people getting over the fear of water, absolutely, and seeing their enthusiasm about how amazing the sport of sailing is. Yeah, great sport, high variable, really different to most sports. Hear all about that when we deal with our partners at the AIS and all the institutes in the States trying to explain sailing. Anyone else? That might be it.
That's everyone.
Come back to the screen. Yeah, again, just thank you for all coming. Thank you for all contributing and joining into the groups. We're always happy to hear any feedback as well. So if you want to type anything to the chat box around what you've experienced tonight or you want to let us know later, please do. We want to try and improve these things and make them about you guys and try and help you get to where you want to go. Thanks, Greg. Have a good night. And that's our intent. And Ian, I might hand it over to you to close out and we'll call it a day there.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Ash. And thanks everyone else that has come tonight and taken part and sort of been involved. As Ash said a minute ago, if anyone has any thoughts on just continual improvement for this stuff and around specifically how we as Australian Sailing can help you develop you as coaches more, please reach out. I've just put my email address in the chat box. So feel free to contact me if you've got a thought on, hey, this would be cool if AS could somehow do this, or whatever it is around either sessions for this type of thing or just some other continuing development work for coaches in the club and class association space. So thank you, everyone.